Welcome to the Creative Jam. Today I'll be speaking with Jerry O'Connor. We'll be talking a little bit about the Adobe Creative Suite and all the things that can be done with it. It's pretty cool. Stick around. See you on the other side. We were talking about stuff, and you mentioned Adobe Cloud. And when now we're talking about things fragmenting, and when you look at it, Adobe Cloud enables anyone. I mean, $50 a month, $600 a year. That's incredibly inexpensive for an infrastructure for business. So you can now compete. You couldn't compete 30 years ago. You couldn't do it. You can compete anywhere, and with whether it's on YouTube or Instagram or podcasting, just that one suite of materials. And yeah, there's a lot of freebies. I understand there's a lot of other things you can do. There's DaVinci Resolve, and there's what's that new Photoshop?
Lumix or
Luminaire or something like that.
Luminaire, yeah.
Whatever it is, yeah, really nice stuff. But when it's all contained, that's when you can look at it with a sort of a pragmatic business eye and go, the infrastructure for an entire, almost anything you want to do digitally for $600 a month. A year.
I mean,
a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also the combination of what you were saying, which was you start with the equipment. We went through this bubble of new equipment. So now even the equipment has come down in price, both lighting, cameras for both, still and video. Then you have the software, $600 a year to edit it. And then you have the platform. So it's those three things kind of in combination that put you in a position that, I can't, it's amazing to me. And what sometimes, and this is really reflected back on myself, is that I feel like there's really no excuses. You want to say, oh, I don't have the right camera. I don't have the right software. And you could do that 20 years ago. You could say, well, I don't have, Illustrator. Or, I don't use it enough that I can afford to pay $2,000 for it.
Yep. And to drive that home, you could do it all on one of these.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
Really could do all of your capture on one of these. Audio in, got this little thing, courtesy John, all read for me. Aldred gave this to me. This is an awesome little mic that goes in here. So all of your audio capture, all of your video capture, 4K video, everything literally could be done on one of these. You don't need to go out and buy a DSLR or fancy anything. And the power of creating, I know for lack of a better word, we all call it content. I call it art. Creating art, creating that thing, it's never been easier to do. And we're looking around and we're seeing challenges to we had how many TV stations? When I grew up, we had 3, and then we got 4, and then cable came along, and we had 150. We still only had 4 because they had 150 stations of crap. And then along comes somebody who realized that streaming was going to be possible, and Netflix took one over Blockbuster because they realized it was cheaper to mail a CD than it was to mail a VHS. There's no way they could have competed with Blockbuster if they were having to mail big VHSs. The CD came out, and they went, we can do that. And when streaming became literally possible with the buffering and all the things that they could put on the units, they said, we're out. We're going to go. We're totally streaming. Meanwhile, the studios are still locked behind paywalls and, advertising ads and all of that model. And here's Netflix. Boom, 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 boom. Now Netflix makes their own films. They're not even bothering to go to Hollywood. I don't know if you've seen this new Kevin Costner film, Highwaymen.
Yeah. Excellent.
Oh man, that was, I read where the Academy Awards, they want to keep Netflix out of the Academy Awards. I can see why.
Well, I mean, this last year, Roma, they wanted to keep that out. And the funny thing is, and granted, the Academy Awards, all of these they're trade shows, really, right? I mean, there are ways to promote a product.
Sure.
And so I think we've come to think that the Academy Awards is somehow artistic based.
No,
And,
it's a commercial.
It's a commercial. I mean, it's basically they want to. It was set up in the 1920s by Charlie Chaplin and some of the other stars to promote movies to get them out. And so it's funny to me though that the way they are excluding them is based on the way the picture is delivered. Yeah. It has nothing to do with whether this is a great movie or not a great movie, but it's like, did it stay in a theater long enough? And that, and I understand it. They're trying to support a business model, because if you start to award shows just to streaming and they don't have to go to theaters anymore, does that put tremendous pressure on theater operators? And does that start to really, put pressure on them to collapse? I mean,
absolutely. I totally get it. I mean, there's a business model that they don't want to
lose.
To lose, and they're afraid that they will offend their greatest business model, which is, of course, the theaters. They get the movies in the theaters.
Exhibitors, yeah.
And it's a sweet deal for them because the theaters end up paying minimum pricing. So if they want that film, the theaters, the chains will say, all right, we'll give you $1.5 million for that film. And then the theaters hope they make their money back. And if they make their money back, they don't have to pay the theaters. But once they go over that, then they start paying a percentage to the makers of the movies.
Oh, interesting.
So
based on the revenues, right?
If it gets, if they can get that movie into a lot of theaters, then the people who made the movies can feel like, okay, we're covered. They're not going to make $30 million that way, but they can cover a lot of their expenses that way.
Right. I mean, I think that part of it though is that theaters, there's going to probably be less of them. If you like theaters, that's unfortunate. But I also think that all of these spaces need to rethink what their purpose is and why they're there. And in fact, I thought for a while that Netflix should actually buy a few theaters or rent some theaters and create something called like the Netflix experience or whatever. You actually go and see their movies and premiere it before maybe it gets on the streaming, just so it builds some excitement around it. But because for me, it's like I enjoy staying at home, watching it on Netflix for the most part. It's a great experience. But there are times when I would like to go out and see a movie.
It would be easy for Netflix to build 15 or 20 theaters all across the country just to put their streaming movies in for the allotted time to be in the Academy Awards. Bottom line, the Academy Awards is a great marketing vehicle, and Netflix wants in on that marketing.
And in some of this, and I model it maybe off music, but what if, like this Highwayman you were just talking about, what if you said to Woody Harrelson and Kevin Costner, hey, look, guys, you have to go on the road to promote it, and we don't want you necessarily have to go on talk shows, but what we're going to do is we're going to have a Netflix experience. We're going to have 20 theaters. You're going to be there for one of the nights, and people, you'll come in after the movie or before the movie, introduce it. People could ask you a few questions, make it a real experience, and then they're going to show the movie. And then the next night,
so easy for the actors to do it.
Well, that, or especially these young, if you're a young filmmaker, you're out trying to promote your movie anyway. If you went to someone and said, hey, will you come out and just do a 10 city tour or a 20 city tour over the course of a couple of months and promote the movie in a physical location? To me, that I would go see that. I would, I would go out for an evening and sit and watch the movie and listen to the person who made it. So I think in a lot of ways, some of these things have to be rethought because the experience of staying at home and watching the movie is great as opposed to just your normal, go out. You have to give people a little bit something more for a reason to go out to see the movie.
Yeah. And we end up down this Netflix thing, but what we were getting at is YouTube.
I know, yeah.
YouTube is now probably one of the biggest. I mean, it's much bigger than movie theaters. It's much bigger than Netflix. It's, factors of 10 times Netflix, people who watch YouTube. Billions of hours a month spent on YouTube. I believe that was the number I just heard, because it's all over the globe. So you can create stuff for the internet, and with your iPhone and Audition and Premiere and Photoshop for whatever, and all this for $600 a month plus, or $600 a year plus your phone, and compete for eyeballs. You know that Mike Rowe has that TV show now on Facebook.
Right.
It's Facebook TV.
Right.
Now, this is really interesting. He just did a podcast or a broadcast where he was talking about that, and they got, so far, the three seasons, which are 10 episodes each season, over 35 million views.
Right.
Imagine if that was on television. There's no way they're going to get 10 million views of a show on television. Television,
right?
I mean, they're happy. They're happy. I understand. Like you look at MSNBC, which is a cable network, and you look at their numbers. They're pulling 625,000 people at peak. 600. That's the population of Tucson.
Well, I mean, I think the thing what you look at from both YouTube, there's a couple things. First, some of these YouTube stars are outdrawing. To me, they're outdrawing some of the cable channels.
Absolutely.
As opposed to
absolutely.
You look at a Casey Neistat or Peter McKinnon or whatever. You look at some of the numbers that they have on some of their videos. It's over 1 million people, and like you said, some of these cable shows may only get 300,000 or something to watch.
Yes.
So it's already, there's that transition going on. And I think it's hard for certain people, certain generations, maybe to do that shift, because we were always kind of taught that, hey, if you're on television, that's the big time. But it's like, I don't know if it's a big time anymore. If you got 11 million subscribers on YouTube, you're about as big as anybody.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to be big time for that much further. And again, it's an arena. Facebook is an arena. YouTube is an arena. Even Instagram with IGTV is an arena that anybody with talent can get into, with a company with production costs of $600 a year.
Yeah.
Of their base production costs.
Yeah. And the other thing to think about YouTube is it's absolutely, I use it for entertainment. And so partially, I mean, I have people that I follow on there, I subscribe to, and occasionally will go on to see, if they posted a video just to be able to watch it. But the other thing that I think sometimes people forget about YouTube is it's Google. And so I think it's still the second largest search engine on the internet after Google. So it's also the practical nature of what you can post there, and you can draw an audience too, because people will find you by just the search nature of it. And so it gives you both this combination of, hey, I'm on there, follow me as, you've discovered me somewhere else, but also I'm going to be searched, the topic I might talk about might be searched for, and that's another way for me to be seen. And so it's very powerful, I think. It's not to disparage Facebook, but that's a tougher part for Facebook, is that I don't think of Facebook as a place I would go search something. I wouldn't.
Well, they have terrible search to begin with.
Yeah, I don't know of anybody else other than Google that. I mean, Siri, I think, is terrible. I think Facebook is terrible. I think Microsoft's Cortana isn't very good. No one seems to have figured out search the way Google has, and that gives YouTube a huge advantage, not just as a place to post your stuff and build a following organically, but they're going to help you, and there's going to be people coming to that site to look for things. I think I was telling you, not only do you use Adobe Creative Cloud, but in combination with something like YouTube, that's how I learn it. these programs are very complicated.
Yeah.
And so I just start on a project, and you go on YouTube and search for the next step. Like, how do I do this? What's the next step? How do I do this?
And,
And there'll be a video on it.
and YouTube is long tail, where
Yes.
network TV is not long tail. There's if you were watching NCIS 10 years ago, and you got to the end of season 5, right?
Yeah.
You're never going to see, if you missed 2 episodes, you're not going to see them again until they come up on TNT or some other places. They're gone. Now with Netflix, they're there all the time. I really liked the movie, the show Longmire. I really liked it.
Right.
It's still on Netflix. I could go back and watch it again. You can't do that with
Well, it's not even watch it again, but you can discover it. In fact, one of there was a show, Breaking Bad, became very popular. They said the first 2 seasons were on AMC. They didn't get any real numbers, but it started to create some buzz by season 2 or 3. And then I mentioned it to you. Let's say we're out at lunch. I say, hey, you got to watch this show. Well, how would you, 20 years ago, how would you catch up? It's like you turn it on and go, I don't know what's going on. Right. Now, they had posted it on Netflix, and the creators of the show attributed the success of the show later in the later seasons to this ability for people to discover it and then catch up.
Yep.
Because it was creating a big buzz. And that's
the very same thing with Supernatural.
Another one that
Supernatural was had good years, some good growth. Then they put it on Netflix, and it shot through the roof to the point where I think they're doing their 17th season.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's the last season. I don't know if it's 16 or 17, but it's either 16 or 17 is the last season. They've said, look, these 2 kids who grew up. 17 years they've spent together making this show. It's time to move on, kind of thing. And same with NCIS. NCIS was doing very well. It was the number 1 on CBS, but it shot up like a rocket once they put it on Netflix and people could discover it. And you could go back and binge watch.
Right.
Which is now a term that we use all the time. It didn't even exist 5 years ago. There was no binge watching.
Right.
It's amazing. I think Facebook's other problem is it's a walled garden.
Right. But before we jumped onto Facebook, what I would say is the phenomena that you were just talking about, the long tail, not only works for commercial television or for highly produced programs, but it also works for your channel. Because if I discover Don and I'm like, hey, this guy's pretty good, now I can go back to your back library and go, all right, I'll sample some more of it. I'm seeing that a little bit with a guy I work with for his YouTube channel, is that there's just a thicker, you get the spikes for every new video that he puts in, but there's like a thicker growth in the value of the back videos. And I'm realizing, people see that first video and now they're like, oh, let me go back and watch 3 or 4 other ones from months ago or a year ago. And so you get that
every day. Every day I'll get a comment on backlogged YouTube videos. Every day I'll get something. And I'll look at the comment. I try to answer all the comments on my YouTube channel, all of them. If it's anything but thanks for watching, but I try to answer them. And I'm popping back, a year and a half, 2 years ago, somebody just discovered it, left a comment, and I answer the comment. And I hope that.
No, I think it definitely helps. But the other thing, what it tells you, and I hate to be too influenced by things that you get from the platform, because I think you should just produce what you think you should produce. But it does give you the sense that maybe you should be producing videos that do have a longer tail, meaning maybe you don't get on and talk about, if you're going to be a channel that's just going to be timely, that's what you should do. But if you're talking about the latest camera, sometimes those videos might not age very well because, that camera fades and people aren't interested in it anymore. So maybe you want to talk about more timeless type things as far as what you're producing, because it's like, lighting, regardless of the equipment you might use, lighting kind of doesn't change. It's pretty much a principle of physics. And as long as you can understand it, those kind of videos will have a long tail because people will always want to learn about it.
Oh, absolutely. And that long tail is so powerful. Facebook has long tail. because you can, if someone discovered Mike Rowe's wonderful series about returning the favor, sort of a pay it forward kind of thing, they discover it today, they can sit and go back and watch. Ooh, I don't, that didn't make a big noise. And I just banged the, okay. They can watch the entire series, which is great for the advertisers.
Right.
Because the advertisers pay for this thing. And then they get this long tail. I was listening to an old, couple of old James Altucher podcasts. And the ads that were running at the time of that podcast are still in the podcast. They may not even be paying James anymore. They're just getting residual, you know, what would you call it? They just, residual they got me to hear their ad, and they're finished paying for it.
Residual attention.
A residual attention, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's also something to think about when you, you know, and I think that maybe Ted Turner knew this years ago when he started TCM, the old movie channel. I mean, that library of old movies, they have been showing those things forever. And, you know, there are still people discovering Casablanca for the first time. So you know, here's a movie that's 80 years old, and there's going to be people who are going to want to watch it and rent it or buy it. And so that kind of informs you in terms of, if you have a library of things that you're building, that can become sort of an asset for you. It may not be the greatest thing, but it's your back catalog. I guess photographers knew this for a long time because for years there were the stock agencies, right? You would take a photo and hopefully you had your back catalog of photos, right?
Yep. And it's really interesting. I don't know if you know the story of this whole old movie thing. There was a movie that when it was made was so poorly received that the company that made the movie didn't renew the copyright
protection
on the movie. And the local TV stations all over the country, these little mom and pops would pop up, and they'd have nothing to run at 9 o'clock at night. And news was over, and they started getting these movies to run. One of them was a little movie called It's a Wonderful Life.
Right.
Which was in the public domain by the time it broke out, and of course became a huge blockbuster movie 15 or 20 years after it was made.
Right. It's like a huge tradition now, right?
Yes.
To watch that movie. But you know, you're right. I was reading some article about it, and they said that that was not a movie that was necessarily popular at all for the first 20 years of its existence.
Oh yeah.
There was other stories about that, like you know, when these cable stations first started. I think that's how what's the prison movie with Tim Robbins, Shawshank. That movie became popular only because I think TNT, again, same kind of thing. I think they owned the right to it, and they just kept showing it over and over again. And just by mere repetition, it built an audience, and now it's grown in terms of the way people view it as a good movie, even though it didn't really get a lot of attention when it first came out. So, yeah, I mean, I think these, you know,
and this is all made possible, basically. All of this stuff is made possible by a $50 a month software package.
Right. You're only limited
in that.
Yeah, I mean, and you're only limited, and this is what you and I were talking about, you're only limited by your own creativity. I mean, there's really it's not that I don't have the tools anymore. The tools are there, and the software is there. You can, and you can learn it. There are access and ways to learn it that are pretty inexpensive.
Yeah.
Through YouTube and through other means, and so it's more. It was when you and I were talking about it. It was more a reflection on myself of like, when I think about it, I'm like, $50 a month is not a small amount, but for a professional grade software and for what you can do with it, it's $600 is. I mean, you always bring up the point. If you wanted to go start a pizza parlor, how much do you think a pizza oven costs? Come on. I mean,
you can't even rent a pizza a pizza oven for $600 a year.
Right.
I mean,
right. Good point.
So,
and that's the other thing, even with it, I mean, you're right. You could use the iPhone, but you can also, there's also these now, because of the internet, because of what we have available, you can now rent very high-end camera equipment for not cheap, but it's at least accessible to you. You know, you can go to Borrow Lenses or Lens Pro to Go or one of these and, you know, get a decent camera at least to do it. And if you can kind of leverage off of some even small clients, say, hey, look, just pay me the cost of the rental of the equipment. You at least can be learning that piece of equipment to use it, you know, to do a project. And then from there you start to kind of pull yourself up just by doing small projects. So
no, that's what got us going. We were talking about sometimes how we're held in place by fear of not having the right stuff, or we feel we can't get ahead because of this or whatever. And that's you're right. The only thing that stops us is our own creativity, our own desire to get up in the morning and make something. That's
right.
it. Because all the stuff we need to make it is right here at our fingertips.
Absolutely. I mean, it totally is. And it's almost as if it's the challenge I have now almost is that there's too many options and then I can't pick one. It's like, just pick one, Jerry. Just do the project. Don't.
I want to make sure that everybody knows we're all aware of Audacity and what's a
free software,
Resolve and all those things. Yeah, those are out there, and they're even cheaper than Adobe. You can do all that stuff for free. Reason I like the Adobe suite is that it's so much more sophisticated. How you move graphics and around, and I mean, dropping a PSD file into Premiere, that's just sweet as heck. I got to tell you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the dynamic linking that they have that allows you to dynamically link from one program to the next is a very powerful thing. And I agree with you. I think that the issue, one of the reasons I like the Adobe Creative Cloud is you can spend part of the value that you bring to a client is these are very professional grade software. So they aren't something that you just can open up and just start into. You have to really know them. I mean, how long have you been using Photoshop? 20 years, you know?
Oh, gosh, the first Photoshop I bought was 2.1, I believe.
Right. So, I mean, but you know, and the concept, so once you are learning these, they do tend to kind of play off each other in terms of, you know, After Effects has some of the feel of what Photoshop, not completely, but and conceptually a lot of the concepts of each of these programs. So DaVinci Resolve and Premiere do have, you know, it's still editing. And
not only that, but the amount of resources. For instance, you can go to Envato and pick up a template for After Effects.
Absolutely.
And just modify it. You can pick up a template for a brochure or a template for a website, or, you know, if you know Dreamweaver, or a template for a Photoshop flyer. You can get all these things relatively inexpensively and very creatively done, and all you just modify them and make them your own and the whole bit. So
right, and they actually even have, I know for InDesign and maybe even some of the others, they have free templates through their Adobe stock.
Absolutely,
you can go in InDesign, and not to be too much of a cheerleader, but they do also offer. You know, they have the portfolio that you can, you know, basically you can upload a portfolio that's included.
And you can sell your work on Adobe stock.
Exactly. And then there's the mobile apps this year. I think at WWDC, I'm not sure, maybe at Max, they'll finally announce it is Photoshop for the iPad. And it looks, you know, from what they demonstrated last year, it looks like it's going to be pretty cool. I know that they're feeling some competition from some other iPad apps, so that's why they're scrambling. But
and that's good.
They've redesigned.
And before I turn off the recorder here, I do want to say we're not being paid from Adobe. We were
No.
we were just talking about that one particular place and the ability to create an entire business. You could run an entire business of creativity from one spot, and I think that's really, really empowering.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's something that I try to remind myself of when I get kind of down about things. You get up every day, and sometimes the fight isn't as strong as possible. Is that, look, you've got these tools that you have the ability to use them, and you have them available. Get out there and just try to make it happen. And I try to just encourage myself to say, you've got some of the most powerful tools that you've ever had, and just go make something happen.
Yeah, there's really nothing we can't do with it.
Creatively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good chat.
It was a good chat. It's always good talking to you, Don.
You bet.